Hello, Sports Map. I'm AJ Hoffman from The Blitz on ESPN 97.5. That is Lance Zierlein from The Bench, mornings on ESPN 97.5 and 92.5. Let's talk a little Astros. Logan Morrison was on David Sampson's podcast and asked whether or not he was pissed off about the Astros cheating. Here's what he had to say about that.
They go into the Astros and they say, hey, we'll give you immunity if you tell us what happened. There's no such thing as immunity. You can't get in trouble for something like this in a CBA. There's nothing going to happen to these players. Nobody's going to get suspended or fined ever. It's non-existent. So then these players, because our union doesn't do the best job at educating players, then talked because they were scared. And then the union found out and said, whoa, guys, stop telling on yourself. And so that got to the Red Sox and to the Yankees. And so they're never going to find out what happened with any other teams.
When we hear from guys like Logan and we hear from guys like Cal Ripken defending the Astros, how much of this scandal itself is just outrage culture born from social media, is just phony?
No, I think the scandal's real. I mean, you're banging on trash cans. There was a huge spike in guys like Marwin Gonzalez's numbers. You had players who definitely benefited during the season. But I think play it for what it is. Talk about what it is. It happened to be something that happened in the year that you won a World Series. But at some point, it is outrage culture. At some point, Twitter gets to be mad about something. That happens all the time, AJ. What pisses me off is that baseball players, just like Logan Morrison gave you the scoop right there, and you mentioned Cal Ripken, we've heard others as well, like Jack Morrison, they really tell you that, no, this is – this kind of thing has happened. This might be a different version, but this has been going on for years and years. And it's crazy because current baseball players, guys who are in the league, are just clutching their pearls nonstop. That's what feels like bullcrap to me. That's what feels disingenuous, is that writers and baseball players who know everything that Logan Morrison just talked about, they still act like this is just beyond comprehension.
How much of it have we really seen outside of the Yankees and the Dodgers? Does everybody feel cheated by the Astros, or is it really just these two teams who happen to be the two teams that get the most media coverage?
No, I think it's a lot of teams and a lot of teams' fans. I think a lot of teams feel upset about it. I think some more than others. It depends on the player, depends on the team. They're the ones that get the most media coverage because they've been, quote unquote, directly affected. Dodgers and Astros have actually played. Dodgers and Yankees actually played the Astros in 2017. I think the Yankees, to me, that's crazy to me that the Yankees would say anything. They haven't had that little, letter unsealed by the commissioner yet, so we don't know what is in the documents there up to this point. So it's a little crazy to me that they're getting reckless. The Red Sox have been notably quiet, as they should be, and I do think there are other players. So we've heard from other players. Mike Trout really lambasted the Astros when this information came out. So I think it's other teams and other players as well. But to act like this is something that's brand new is kind of ridiculous, especially when we know that it came from Alex Cora and especially Carlos Beltran.
You mentioned Alex Cora. Why is it that the media seems to believe Alex Cora when he says the Red Sox didn't need to cheat, but nobody bought that from the Astros side of things? Because
it's easiest just to have a single it's easier to target one group, one person, one being, whatever the case may be. In this particular instance, it's one team. It's easier to target that team and make them the bad guy than to have to spread it out, because then the people who are so upset by this might have to get off the Astros a little bit, and which would be an admission that there's multiple people doing it. And I don't think they want to do that. I think they want to make some type of distinction between, everyone else who cheated, that's just part of baseball. But what the Astros did, now that's too far. That is too far, sir.
Does it seem like maybe the Red Sox, having been a team that had already been in trouble before for the Apple Watches, do you think that they were just maybe wiser to the fact that they didn't have to talk to Major League Baseball in this situation, whereas the Astros, it was their first time getting in trouble, and they didn't know what protocol was at that point?
I think that's an interesting question. I think the one big difference is I think the Astros felt like I think the heat was on because they had somebody rat on them. Somebody who was on the team ratted on them. And I think the concern was there were other people, maybe other players from previously. They didn't know who was talking, guys who left the team from 17. Because remember, this happened a few years after they won that championship and after the trash can banging happened. So I think their concern was, man, we don't know what Major League Baseball has. Maybe we should just come clean and unburden ourselves, because maybe that was an issue for them. Is maybe there was some guilt there. I don't know, but I think it's an interesting topic because the Red Sox didn't have anybody that directly gave them up from a player standpoint. So I think there is something to, they kept it real tight and said we're gonna say what we got to say. I mean, to act like one guy, some intern in a scoreboard, was doing something by himself, he was going rogue. Not only did he not get fired, he got promoted recently. I mean, that's obviously outrageous. We know that that's not the case. We know Alex Cora was involved, but I think they kept it very tight because there was no player that ratted them out directly, and the Astros did have that. And I think that's why the Astros responded differently. I don't know if it was because they didn't know that they didn't have to, they did or didn't have to, whatever the case may be, but I think Major League Baseball had something they could bang the Astros over the head with, and the Red Sox, the Red Sox just knew they could really lawyer up, so to speak, and probably weather the storm.